You may remember that I addressed a letter to myself, care of General Delivery, in Rapid City, South Dakota, and I mailed it from Holbrook, Arizona. So I'm now in Rapid City, so I thought I'd pop over to the main post office and see if they had the letter.
There you go, John.
Well, I'll be darned. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
The cost of this was the same as a first-class letter. I'm not exactly sure what you do with this. I suppose you could send mail if you were on a long trip. In my case, Ann joined me after about a week, so she was able to bring all the accumulated mail and bills that I had to deal with. My friend Bob pointed out to me I actually addressed this to Rapid City, North Dakota, although I suppose I had the right zip code. So, leaving Rapid City and heading east, you can see that we're back into flatland. We've left the Black Hills behind, although we will be approaching the Badlands in another 70 miles or so, but for the moment it's extremely flat. In Wall, South Dakota, there's a place apparently quite well known called Wall Drugstore, and there are literally hundreds of signs as you approach the city, so you almost have to go see what it looks like. Burma Shave was a manufacturer of brushless shaving cream that came in a jar or tube, and they came up with the idea of having these jingles on highway signs, and they had over 600 jingles, over 7,000 signs across the country. And so they were extremely ubiquitous and probably the first example of advertising that went viral. So this is the supercharger in Wall, South Dakota, which appears to be all about Wall Drug Company. To tell you the truth, I didn't really get the rationale for this store. It's really an accumulation of smaller stores. I guess Wall Drug owns them all, but they might sublease certain departments. But its core, they have a lot of good comfort food, promptly served at a good price. As the billboards announced and the signs in the store, they would give a free coffee and donut for veterans. I told them I was a veteran. They offered it to me. I took the coffee and declined the donut. Behind the store, they had a bunch of old Western memorabilia, and kids seemed to enjoy this a lot. It was quite crowded, so I guess other people must have enjoyed it more than I. And there's more stuff just like it across the street. I saw a lot of motorcycle riders across South Dakota. Most were in groups of 2 to 20. This particular lady seems to have fallen totally asleep while her husband is taking her to the next stop. In the course of nearly a year with my Tesla, I've occasionally seen a supercharger location that says reduced service. In every case, I've been able to get a partial charge at least. Sometimes one stall was out, but usually it was a question of not having high enough output power. So that was the case here. I got 10 kilowatts or so and moved on down the road. Several people suggested I see the Corn Palace in Mitchell, South Dakota. So I did. It's basically just an auditorium that has decorative corn husk on the outside. And it's kind of like a community recreational center. It has basketball facilities, auditorium facilities. It's actually quite nice, and there's a lot of history of this in South Dakota. It's right next to City Hall, so I guess it's safe. I found Mitchell to be a very pleasant town. It looked like it would be a good place to raise kids. It's the home of Dakota Wesleyan University and the home of George McGovern, who has the distinction of running against Richard Nixon and only winning one state. Shortly before reaching the Missouri River, I stopped for another supercharger and came across Hal's Casino and other stores. Reminded me a little bit of Wall Drug, more the same. Lots of storefront units assembled together to make a shopping area of some size. In the parking lot, I came across this vehicle, which is obviously owned by Google, and this is what they use to map the street view that you see on Google Maps. I'd hate to think how many miles they put on these cars in order to provide all that data. I crossed the Missouri River near Chamberlain, South Dakota. The Missouri River is the longest river in North America. It begins in the Rocky Mountains of the eastern Centennial Mountains of southwestern Montana and flows east and south for over 2,300 miles before entering the Mississippi River north of St. Louis. Of course, history remembers the Louisiana Purchase under President Jefferson for the amount of $15 million. The territory was under multiple claims, including Spain and the United States, so it wasn't exactly a clean title. It was more of a treaty with France to have them recognize the United States ownership. Apparently, the expedition stayed in this area for several days while they rested up and proceeded for the next part of their journey. There are a couple of very impressive monuments on this bluff overlooking the river, including the statue called Dignity. Back on the road again, I passed what looks to be a portion of a propeller from a wind turbine. Those things are huge. I thought the town of Sioux Falls, South Dakota was very nice. It's the biggest city in South Dakota, although the population is still under 200,000. And the Big Sioux River tumbles over a series of rocks in Falls Park, which I think is very charming. Apparently, Sioux Falls has more than 70 parks and greenways, so it's just a nice, clean city to live in, it appears to me. Basically, what I got from this sign is that this particular rock is very resistant to erosion. The Tesla sales team in this area had an interesting offer to drive a Model Y Performance and left the car parked in the parking lot of my motel, and all you had to do was to scan the code and give them some information, and they would remotely unlock it and let you do it. As I'm finishing up this episode, I'm now back in North Carolina, where I arrived last night. It's time for me to wrap this up, so when I get a chance, I'm going to do one last episode that will summarize the last 4 days. And then, after a few more days, I'll try to publish another episode outlining my thoughts on the journey. Thanks for watching.